watching Rainbow Rocks Beauty, and this is my next Halloween tutorial. It's Sally from The Nightmare Before Christmas, and this is a super fun, super cute, and easy makeup to do. And it's easy to get a really good, high quality result for how easy it is. I hope you enjoy. So starting with the base, whenever I paint my face one solid color, I like to use Ben Nye Clown White or any high quality white cream paint. And then I like to use powder eyeshadows to make it whatever color I could ever dream of. And so for this, I'm taking Cornflower Blue eyeshadow from Coastal Scents. You just want to take something matte and something light. You could also take something darker and just use less. And I scrape quite a bit of it in with an eyebrow brush. You can also use a clean mascara wand, whatever you find doesn't damage the eyeshadow too much. I mix them together with a palette knife, and then I just start applying them to the face. Basically with a product that's this thick, like the cream paint, a sponge is going to work best to disperse it and give it the most natural finish. Otherwise, if you're using a brush, it can look streaky. It won't become a part of your skin like the sponge will do. The sponge pushes it into your pores and pushes it into all the nooks and crannies and makes it look like you have that color of skin. So I always use a damp sponge when working with a product like this. And I literally just press and press and press until the color's even throughout my whole face. Same thing on the chest. I just use the palette knife to place the product on to the surface, and then I just use the sponge and basically pick up the product with the sponge, move it around, and pat it in everywhere that I'm putting it. After using a sponge, your second most important step is going to be to set it heavily using a translucent powder. And I also just use the same sponge to place it because the sponge really packs on the powder and makes sure it's nice and thick on the face, and make sure it just sets the makeup and makes it nice and secure. So I just put literally just a ton of powder everywhere that I can crease, all over the face, on the neck, all over the ears, and I just pack it on everywhere. And once I feel that everything's nice and baked and it's on every surface and it's nice and thick and everything is nice and secure, I brush it off using a brush that is synthetic just in case any cream does get on it, but that's also nice and fluffy. I'm going to go right into the eyes using the same Cornflower Blue eyeshadow, just concentrated obviously. And I'm just going to start carving out my orbital bone heavily so that we create that nice rounded out eye shape. So what I'm doing is just following all the way from the inside of my nose out to the corner of my eye and making sure it's like a nice semicircle that frames the eye perfectly, as in it's the same round shape as my eye. I also take it underneath with a smaller brush, and I'm just hugging this closely to my lash line, and I'm not bringing it all the way to the inner corner quite, and I'm keeping it underneath the tear duct as well. And then I just go over everything one more time to make sure it's even throughout, and then I blend with a fluffy brush. And this is just a process of using circular motions and a light hand to make sure the product is diffused and looks like a shadow, a darker version of your skin. As you can see, it's starting to look with the blending like a natural orbital bone shape. Next, I'm going into Sugar Pill After Party eyeshadow, which is a little bit of a warmer blue, darker and slightly more pigmented as well. I'm going to use this to start deepening the crease. I always like to start on the ends, so starting on the outer corner and starting on the inner corner and just blending inward that way, just because that's kind of where the two natural indents of the face are, so it's an easy way to map it out and get your right shape. I also take it underneath and I take it about halfway through, and then I just blend across continuously once all my product is placed. I also go back over with the same Cornflower Blue shade to kind of cool down that shade again, because it's a slightly warmer blue, but we want to keep this nice and cool. Once I'm happy with both those colors, I go back in with the same fluffy brush and just blend. I'm going for the same thing, a natural blended out orbital bone shape, like natural contours of the eye. Next, I'm going into Velocity by Sugarpill, which is an even darker blue, and it's nice and cool toned. And on a flat definer brush, I'm starting to cut the crease. What I do is start at the very bottom of where I was placing both my blues before, and I just trace this all the way around that eye. Don't worry about blending until all your color is laid down, and just make sure you're carving out that crease and making that line nice and flat and even. Then once it's placed, I blend it upward. I place a little bit of that blue on the outside as well with a fluffier brush, and I just make sure it's blended into both of the blues I was already using. This is just a way to further deepen it and make it look like a more natural orbital bone shape. Next, I'm taking a white eyeshadow and I'm just packing this on the entire lid. And again, I'm carving out that crease by making a nice harsh line right where it meets my blues. What this is doing is highlighting the lid because our face is blue essentially, and the white is just going to make it highlighted. I'm going to go straight into the nose next using my same cornflower blue color and on a paddle shaped brush. I want to make the nose look a little bit more doll-like because Sally is a doll. So what I'm doing is first making a straight line directly down so that my nose doesn't get bigger or taper anywhere. And then I just blend it off to the side like you can see me doing here. I make sure to blend with circular motions and up and down motions all the while to make sure that the blue looks like a shadow. I also make sure to hit underneath my nose, and I make a bridge across the front of my nose, as you can see me doing here once there's less product on the brush. Now I'm putting a little bit in my cupid's bow so we can get more doll-like lips. I'm putting a little bit underneath as well. Both of these techniques are going to make the lips look a little bit more round. And then I'm highlighting my nose using a white eyeshadow again. I'm only placing this on the tip because she has a nice pointed, cute doll-like nose. And I'm also putting it on the cupid's bow again to round out the lips. I'm putting a white pencil on my waterline. This is going to open the eyes and make them look nice and large because she has large white eyes. And then to make the eyes look even more large, I'm lining my upper waterline with a white liquid liner. I'm going to bring this all the way across in a nice thin line, and this is just going to add just slightly more largeness to the eye. I just like to do this by looking down at my mirror and just carefully lining right up against the lash line. And then to give the eyes even more of a doe-eyed effect, I'm putting a little bit of black liquid liner just on the outer corner. I'm not winging it out, I'm just making sure it connects to my lower lash line so that there's not like any sort of jaggedness down there. And then I'm just making that nice and black and doe-eyed. I'm applying mascara so that I can put on false lashes later, but I am going to wait and do that later. Make sure to put some mascara on top to cover up some of that white liquid liner. Next, I'm going into the color Ash Gray from Coastal Scents, and I'm using this color to start to create my stitches. I'm going to use a black, a white, and a gray. The reason I'm starting with the gray is because it is sort of like our blending shades. We want to give the stitches a little bit of dimension so they don't just look 2D. So by starting with the gray on an angled brush, I'm just mapping out my lines, and I'm going to be able to smudge this a little bit just with the same brush as I'm adding more, and that's going to create a shadow effect to give the stitch a little bit more dimension. So as you can see, when I trace over it, once all the product is deposited, it smudges the line a little bit. Next, I'm taking an even smaller angled brush, something that's a little bit more thin on the tip, and I'm using that just with a black eyeshadow, and as you can see, I'm just making a straight line in the center of my smudged gray line, and this makes it look like there's shadow around the black line that gives that stitch that dimension. I'm going in and following the same steps with the cross stitches, alternating them and not making them the same distance apart because that gives it more of like a thrown together ragdoll effect. And again, I just create a gray line, I smudge it a little bit with the brush, and then I take the thinner brush and just use tapping to put a black line in the center. Next, the most important part in my opinion is to take a white eyeshadow and just to put this around the edge of every stitch, both the cross stitches and the main stitch, and this just gives it that raised effect, and that's going to be really important to making it not look 2D on your face. You don't have to blend it or anything, you can just tap and it looks like that skin is stretched, that I guess doll cloth is stretched. Okay, so I'm doing the same thing, following the same exact process, I'm making one stitch across my neck. I made one across my chest and then one going diagonally through it. I'm also going to make one coming down from one of my eyes. That's going to connect to the ones that go across the lips. One of the lip ones is going to stop right in the hollow of my cheek, and then one is going to meet one that connects from around like my temple down to my jaw. You can see it right here, and those are all basically all the face stitches I'm going to make, following the same exact process. Once those are done, I'm applying the lashes, and I want something wispy and beautiful, and she has like the really, really long ones as well, so you want to factor that in. These are Red Cherry 105s, I believe. And lastly, I'm doing my lips. I'm using Sienna lip liner from NYX. You want to use a red that is bold and that is there, but not something that's too bright or too neon or anything that has a white base, if that makes sense. So I'm starting with this like just nice deep red, no burgundy. It's just like almost has like a nice chestnut undertone. And to round out the lips, I don't bring it all the way to the corner of my mouth. I bring it upwards slightly, kind of inwards in a more round motion, so that it's not actually a corner, like a 90-degree angle. And then I make sure to overdraw my Cupid's bow and connect it straight down. It's always easy to do the Cupid's bow first and kind of create an X in there. And then for the perfect red for this is Kat Von D Nosferatu. It's just a nice mid-tone crimson, and that is your look. You've got the stitches, the red lips, the nice blue rounded out eyes, and it's just a nice simple way to do the Sally look. And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you learned something good, and I hope you have a super spoopy Halloween. Thank you.